Maybe you're not fully here. A part of you, quiet, invisible, and imperceptible, might be existing right now in a place that doesn't obey the laws of space or time. A place beyond everything you've learned to call real. This isn't something you notice in the rush of your daily routine, nor something you hear over the constant noise of your inner dialogue. But somewhere, behind the endless chatter of your mind and the pull of gravity on your physical body, something much deeper is stirring. There is a version of you that carries no memory, does not suffer the effects of aging, and knows no limitations. And no, that doesn't mean you're dreaming. In fact, it might mean exactly the opposite, that a much deeper part of you, more real than anything your senses can grasp, is fully awake, somewhere else. Modern physics tells us we live in a universe made up of 4 dimensions: up, down, front, back, and time, which drags us continuously in one direction. But the most advanced scientific theories, those attempting to unify the greatest mysteries of existence, from black holes to the tiniest subatomic particles, state that our universe is not limited to these 4 dimensions. In fact, it depends on more dimensions to exist. One of these, known as the 11th dimension, is a silent, invisible stage where everything you know, perceive, and experience might be happening right now. But this raises an unavoidable question. If reality has 11 layers and you can only move through 4, are you really living fully? Are you truly whole? By crossing the ancient maps of mystics with the most advanced models of contemporary theoretical physics, we begin to see a hidden pattern emerging. A pattern that points to the possibility that what you call the self may never have been confined inside a skull. Perhaps your consciousness is not a biological product limited to matter, nor trapped in the cycle of birth and death. What if your consciousness extends far beyond biology? What if it exists beyond chronology, beyond the timelines you perceive? What if what you understand as your life is actually just a projection, a fraction of a much larger, far broader self that you have yet to become aware of? This isn't a statement, nor is it a belief or a doctrine. It is simply an invitation, a rare opportunity to, for a few moments, allow your mind to hold in its hands a possibility as profound as it is unsettling, and from there to ask the only question that truly matters: what if it's true? Throughout this journey, we will explore the mysteries of the 11th dimension as understood by M-theory, one of the most advanced theories in modern physics. We will delve into Carl Jung's visions of the human psyche, draw from the ancient wisdom of Vedanta, and dive into contemporary studies on consciousness that are increasingly whispering that there is something extraordinary behind what we call reality. No, this isn't science fiction. This isn't fantasy nor mere speculation. It's a calling, an invitation for you to listen more carefully, more sensitively, to the subtle echoes of your own existence. As always, this video doesn't aim to offer absolute answers, nor to close any doors. What it offers, in truth, is something far more valuable: the chance for you to simply sit, breathe, and contemplate the living presence of a possibility much deeper than everything you ever imagined to be real. The rest of the journey is yours. Only you can feel it, only you can question it, and maybe, just maybe, only you can remember. If you're someone who carries within a nearly insatiable passion for asking impossible questions, for pushing the limits of perception and exploring what this thing we call reality truly is, then know this: you are already one of us. So join this community, subscribe, be part of the journey, because from here on out, it only gets deeper. And now I ask you, are you truly ready to meet the part of yourself that has been quietly waiting for you all along? Then get ready, because it's time to dive in. You move through space as if everything that exists is exactly what you perceive. Forward, backward, side to side, up and down. All the while, time drags you like an invisible current from which no one can escape. But what if this three-dimensional reality you've accepted all your life is actually just a shadow, a pale projection on the wall of a room far greater than you've ever dared to imagine? In physics, M-theory proposes something many consider incredibly bold. It attempts to unify every known variation of string theory into a single coherent framework. And to do that, it doesn't simply add more complexity, it adds more dimensions. Not 5, not 7, but 11. According to this model, the universe isn't made of particles as we were once taught. Instead, it's composed of tiny vibrating strings. And these strings don't just vibrate through the 3 spatial dimensions you're familiar with. They ripple, they resonate through up to 10 spatial dimensions plus time. And here comes the great mystery. If these strings truly exist, then why can't you see them? Why can't you feel them? Where are they? The answer is as simple as it is unsettling. They are compacted, curled up on a scale so unimaginably small, so tightly wound, that they become completely invisible, like threads coiled within the very thickness of a single sheet of paper. You live inside what physicists call a three-brain, a three-dimensional membrane floating within a space of higher dimensions. It's as if you were a character drawn on a sheet of paper, completely unable to lift your head and perceive the air that surrounds the page. And yet that larger space exists. It's there, even if you've never been taught how to perceive it. Entire universes, complete realities, could be stacked on top of each other like pages in a cosmic book. They're not separated from you by great distances, but by a direction, a coordinate, an axis that your mind, confined to 3 dimensions, simply cannot conceive. These brains can collide, drift, vibrate, and generate waves, gravitational echoes that ripple through the entire cosmos. And according to some theories, the Big Bang itself, the origin of everything you know, may have actually been the result of a colossal collision between 2 of these brains. This isn't science fiction. These ideas weren't born in the minds of imaginative writers, but in the brilliant minds of theoretical physicists. Edward Witten, one of the architects of M-theory, didn't invent the 11th dimension as a work of fantasy. It emerged as a mathematical necessity, an absolutely essential space where gravity and quantum forces can finally speak the same language, where they can coexist without contradiction. But this is exactly where a quiet, unsettling implication begins to surface. One that's hard to ignore. If you are a being formed within a 3-dimensional brain, then your perception, your worldview, and everything you understand as reality is shaped, limited, and confined by that very condition. You don't experience the 11th dimension, not because it isn't real, but because your senses were simply never designed to perceive it. And then a question arises, one that could change everything. If your senses weren't built to perceive that dimension, what else were they never meant to perceive? If reality includes structures, spaces, and layers that exist beyond your sensory reach, what does that say about you, about who you really are? Are you merely a product of your brain, a fleeting biological spark, a local accident of memory and matter? Or could it be that parts of your consciousness, fragments of your own identity, are, right now, touching dimensions your physical body will never access? Think for a moment about that déjà vu that sends chills down your spine. That strange sense of familiarity with something you've never lived through. Or that inexplicable pull toward a place, a person, or an experience you can't quite explain. And what if that's not just your mind playing tricks on you? What if they're echoes, reverberations from a presence that exists in a space your eyes can't see, but that, somehow, is still you? You see yourself as a single thread, a line unfolding through a story, a name, a body that wakes up in the same bed every morning. But what if that thread is just one tiny strand, lost within a far greater tapestry? What if the rest of you is unfolding, to living, happening somewhere else. Carl Jung called this the self. Not the ego, not the conscious mind, but something infinitely vaster. A totality of being that excludes nothing, that embraces both your light and your shadow, both the conscious and the unconscious, both the personal and the transpersonal. In Jung's deeper vision, this truer self wasn't limited to the small mask you wear in the world. It extended far beyond time. It was a living bridge, connecting moments, identities, stories, and even entire lifetimes. A single field of meaning, expressing itself through many forms, many faces. The ancient mystics of the East spoke of the same truth. In Vedanta, the true self, the Atman, isn't just a spark hidden within you. It is the infinite itself, reflecting through the finite. The Gnostics saw the soul not as something whole, cohesive, complete, but as something fragmented, scattered, dispersed across dimensions. Like light that splits into 1,000 colors when it passes through a prism. In Theosophy, the same idea takes another form. This awakened personality, this you that you believe yourself to be, is only a layer, a surface. Beneath it, there are other bodies, other levels, the astral body, the causal body, the divine body. Different densities, different frequencies, different aspects of who you truly are. If consciousness is layered, if it is truly multidimensional, then what does that mean for your experience right now? Have you ever had a dream so vivid, so incredibly real, it felt truer than waking life? Have you ever felt déjà vu, that moment that hits you like a memory you shouldn't have, but somehow was already there? Or that flash of intuition, clear, direct, precise, arriving before the event itself? Know this, these things aren't system errors. They're not glitches in your brain. They are leaks, cracks in the veil, faint echoes from other versions of you, versions that are not bound by this time or this space. And the most fascinating part, modern thinkers are beginning to arrive at the very same conclusions, not through rituals or meditations, but through equations, through pure mathematics. Some theories now suggest that the brain does not create consciousness, it merely receives it, just like a radio doesn't create the music. It simply tunes into the right frequency to play it. So consciousness may not be generated inside you. You might just be the receiver. The holonomic model of the brain suggests that memory and perception aren't stored like files in a cabinet, but more like holographic patterns where each part contains the whole and the whole exists beyond the parts. If that's true, then maybe your consciousness isn't something happening inside your brain. Maybe your brain is just a tuner, an instrument, an antenna, picking up something far greater. And what it's tuning into might not come from this plane alone. And this, inevitably, raises a question that's impossible to ignore. If your waking self is only a receiver, could there be other receivers? Other parts of you, tuned into different layers of reality? Maybe when you dream, those boundaries loosen. Maybe in absolute silence, the signal becomes clearer. And maybe, just maybe, the reason certain memories feel older than this life is because somehow they truly are. Not in the classical sense of reincarnation, but in a fractal sense of existence. As if your consciousness were unfolding simultaneously across multiple realities, living, experiencing, observing from many angles, all at once. The person you know as you is real. But perhaps it's only the surface tension of a deep, silent, unmoving ocean. And in those moments of silence, in déjà vu, in sudden knowing, in that strange, almost aching feeling that you've forgotten something vital, maybe that's another version of you, brushing up against this one. Not a stranger, not a fantasy, just another part of you. Imagine for a moment that your thoughts are just ripples on the surface, And true consciousness is the ocean beneath, not as a poetic metaphor, but as something physical, structural, real. And what if your consciousness isn't inside your head, but instead your head is inside your consciousness? This isn't mysticism in disguise, it's a growing suspicion among physicists, philosophers, and consciousness researchers that what we call the mind may not be a byproduct of neurons, but a fundamental field embedded within the fabric of reality itself. David Bohm, a quantum physicist who moved seamlessly between equations and deep intuition, proposed that what we experience is only the explicate order, the visible, measurable, tangible world. But behind it lies the implicate order, a deeper dimension folded upon itself where everything is connected, where the separation between objects, beings, and moments simply collapses. In this model, consciousness doesn't emerge from matter, it expresses itself through matter. Other thinkers, like philosopher Philip Goff, approach the same idea from another angle. If consciousness is real and irreducible, then perhaps it's not an exception of nature, but a fundamental property of existence itself. This perspective is known as panpsychism, the idea that consciousness in some form is present in all things, not in the naive sense that rocks can think, but in the deeper realization that matter itself carries, in its essence, the potential for experience, as if they were pixels of awareness, waiting to light up when the conditions are right. If that's true, then your brain, your body, they're not the source of who you are. They're just a lens, a receiver, an instrument capable of tuning into a specific frequency from a vast spectrum of being. Just one perspective among countless others. And what's even more surprising is that this view isn't just philosophical. It aligns, almost eerily, with the accounts of people who've had near-death experiences, people who were clinically dead, and yet returned describing perceptions far beyond the physical. Scenes viewed from above as if they were floating near the ceiling, conversations heard through closed doors, precise details later confirmed to be true. These experiences may not prove life after death, but they challenge relentlessly the belief that consciousness disappears when the brain shuts down, and if consciousness can exist, even for a few moments, independent of the body, then what does that say about its true origin? Maybe what you call yourself is actually a projection, not an illusion, but a geometric projection, like a three-dimensional object casting a two-dimensional shadow onto a wall. Your waking self, your linear mind, your memories, your emotions could all be just the shadow. The true structure, the full self, may exist in a space of higher dimensions. It's not that you're living a lie, it's that you're living only a fraction, a slice of a far greater truth. And if M theory is correct, if our universe really is a brain floating in an 11-dimensional field, then why should consciousness play by different rules? Maybe consciousness is also confined to the brains. Or maybe it's what flows between the brains, the connective tissue, the field that remembers everything because it is everything. And maybe that's why sometimes you feel things before they happen. Why you wake up from dreams that feel more like memories. Why a single word, a glance, a moment of silence can open a door inside of you, a door you didn't even know was there, because some part of you is still watching. From the other side, you wake from a dream, heart racing, tears on your face. But it wasn't from this life, not from these people, not from this world, and yet it felt more real than anything you've ever experienced awake. You can't explain it, you try to forget, but the feeling lingers, like an unfinished sentence written directly into your soul. These aren't just dreams, sometimes they're something else entirely. Across cultures, centuries, and entire civilizations, people have reported visions, lucid states, moments of deep knowing that defy any rational explanation. A child describes in eerily accurate detail a place they've never been. Someone in deep meditation begins to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into a greater presence, a consciousness observing from beyond. Psychedelic journeys, spontaneous mystical episodes, or that dizzying discomfort of déjà vu. These experiences aren't glitches of the mind. Maybe they're cracks in the floor of perceived reality. In deep meditation, the edges of the self often begin to dissolve. The sense of I becomes thin, almost disappears. But consciousness remains and stretches far, far beyond. Some describe encounters with a version of themselves that feels, at the same time, intimately familiar and profoundly unknown. A wiser presence, older, as if it exists beyond the flow of time. In altered states, whether through breathwork, plant medicines, or even the grief of loss, this same phenomenon appears. It's as if the person you are here is only a window in an infinitely larger house, and sometimes that larger presence shows up quietly. A sudden emotional shift that makes no sense, an intuition that arrives whole, fully formed, like a memory from the future before the event even unfolds. Or that strange pull, that unexplainable urge to go somewhere you've never been, followed by the overwhelming sensation that somehow you've always belonged there. Science, though still struggling to measure these moments, isn't ignoring them. Serious research into dream states, entheogenic experiences, and near-death perceptions is beginning to uncover consistent patterns. Reports of hyperreality, of time collapsing, of identity perceived in multiple layers. Today, some researchers are beginning to speculate that maybe consciousness, in certain states, can momentarily decouple from its usual neurological anchors, allowing access to states or even dimensions that are normally completely out of reach. From a dimensional perspective, these might be moments of resonance, fleeting instants when the frequency of your embodied self aligns, even for a few seconds, with a version of you that exists elsewhere, in another fold of time, from another angle of being. The interface slips, the veil grows thin, and for just a moment you touch yourself from beyond. Jung once wrote that the self doesn't speak in words, it speaks in symbols, in synchronicities, in dreams, in events that seem like random coincidences, but quietly carry deep meaning. The ancient seers said the same thing in a different way. The soul doesn't speak through language, it communicates through signs. And interestingly, some of the most modern theories of mind are beginning to suggest that consciousness might exist on a spectrum much wider than anything we've been able to map so far. In this model, dreams, intuitions, gut feelings, and even unexplained sensations aren't glitches or hallucinations. They are data points, clues, positioned right on the edge of an unfinished map we're still trying to decode. So, what if these experiences we call strange, marginal, mysterious, aren't errors or failures or background noise? What if they're actually the center, not interruptions of reality, but invitations, soft, subtle invitations to remember who you truly are? And what if that presence you sometimes feel in silence, watching you from behind your own thoughts, isn't imagination, isn't delusion? What if that presence is you, a larger version of you that exists right now, somewhere in the 11th dimension, not floating above you, not watching from a distance, but walking beside you, always, a greater self that might already be awake, not a god, not a guide, not some separate entity, just the part of you that never fragmented, that never forgot, that never fell asleep inside the limited story you've come to call your life. And maybe, every so often, it reaches out across the dimensional veil, not with answers, not with certainty, but with a sensation, a quiet remembering, a sudden clarity, a breath in the heart that needs no words and says without any sound at all, I'm still here. And maybe in this very moment, so are you, fully, completely, even if only for a single breath. Maybe remembering who you are has nothing to do with diving deeper into thoughts, analysis, or concepts. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's about expanding, or more widely, into presence. You've lived your whole life believing you are a singular being, a name, a voice, a story stitched together from choices, memories, and experience. But what if that identity is just one of many faces on a multifaceted jewel? And what if the rest of you isn't lost, isn't far away? It simply lives elsewhere, not in the future, not in the past, but in a dimension where time is not linear and the self is not singular. The 11th dimension, then, is not just a physics abstraction, not just mathematics. It is a symbol, a pointer, a conceptual key meant to help you imagine, if only for a moment, what is, by its very nature, unimaginable. Imagine that your consciousness isn't a straight line. It's a vast, multi-threaded tapestry unfolding in spaces your senses, your tools, and your thoughts were never designed to reach. And maybe, when you dream of lives that don't seem to be yours, they are. Maybe, when you feel a truth that makes absolutely no logical sense, it's simply because logic is a local language, and your being speaks a much wider dialect. There's no proof you can hold in your hands, no equation that can solve this question. There is only the subtle gravity of your own inner knowing, that quiet suspicion that has always lived inside you, a voice that doesn't speak in words, but softly whispers what you call you is only the beginning. If that's true, then this life, this personality, this story, this moment, and they are not the whole, they're just a chapter. And somewhere in the dimensional pages unfolding around you, other parts of your story are already playing out. Watching, waiting, whispering, not to pull you away and to distract you from what truly matters here, but simply to remind you of what you are. You're not broken, you're not small, you are not inadequate, you are simply unfinished. And maybe that is the most beautiful thing of all. If the rest of you is out there, then the great question that remains is, what will it take for you to finally feel whole? The truth is, we're not here to find all the answers. Maybe that we never were. We are here simply to remember the questions that truly matter. If you've made it this far, it's because something deep inside you is calling for more, for a purer truth, a sharper awareness, and a more intimate connection with the unseen force that gives shape to the visible. And now, I want to share with you something that will expand your consciousness even further. Get ready to take the next step. I present to you the Map of the Higher Self, a powerful e-book born from my most intense and authentic experiences. It brings together practices, insights, and mental keys that will guide you on a path of clarity, presence, and inner awakening. But it doesn't stop there. When you get the book, you'll also receive free access to the Sacred Library, an exclusive digital collection of rare, forbidden works removed from our history, hidden texts that reveal what has been concealed from humanity for centuries and is now within your reach. This map is not just a book, it's a tool for transformation. If you've arrived here, it's no accident. This is a sign. You're ready to elevate your perception and take control of your own reality. Click the link in the pinned comment and dive into this journey of self-knowledge with courage, focus, and awareness. And don't stop here. I've handpicked 2 essential videos that will expand even further everything we explored today. Choose one and keep exploring the deeper layers of your being. Remember, the truth is not found in the noise of the world, but in the silent voice of awakening consciousness.